going this way.
Yeah. We're going to go.
We're going around.
So exciting. What am I looking at?
Yeah, so this is an NC milling fixture. This is for Boeing, Portland, and Oregon. What this does is this holds titanium core, which is part of the ring of the 7X program. So we make this tool. They'll hold it down and apply vacuum to these sections here, and it'll suction and restrain the part while it goes through its finished machine. Yes.
So this is the kind of thing you're talking about, the transition, going from automotive supply, which is how the company really started, to doing this kind of
Right. So Lisa's function here is she's checking it. This was certified to make sure it's within.
Show me how you do that.
This is the joist that we're doing.
Yeah.
And you push the buttons and it will move it up and down. And I can move it sideways. Sorry. And then up on the screen I have CAT.
Okay.
This is the part. It's already aligned. You line up 2-lane, 4-lane. And then I can take a point on here. And it'll calculate the profile of it.
Oh, wow.
So this will take a coordinate in space and then record that value so we can compare it to.
And then
Make sure it's, so you see the number that says PR?
Yeah.
0 minus 0.001. That's 1,000 centimeters. Human hair is 4,000.
Sorry.
Human hair is 4,000 centimeters diameter.
So I'll actually program the whole part and then I'll run it. So we actually program the computer.
So how many of these do you make?
They're all it's really a specialty machine shop.
Don't you think we could really invest in and get more precision machining and manufacturing? I mean, you know, I go to factories, which I do a lot. I like doing it. And they say we got this machine from Japan, we got this machine from Germany. There is no reason.
Give it some more room.
Oops, sorry.
Well, okay. Okay, then I'll go back.
This is a tool that will make up
All right, guys, let's go back over there.
over here. We have F-35.
How are you?
Rob Oliver. So Rob's program manager on this project, and also the tool maker. So Mike can tell you about
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage President of Futuromic, Mark Jurek, and Secretary Hillary Clinton.
Listen, baby, ain't no mountain high, ain't no valley low, ain't no river wide enough, baby.
If you need me, call me, no matter where you are, no matter how far.
Don't worry, baby. Low enough, ain't no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you, baby. Remember the day I set you free? I told you you could always count on me, darling. From that day on, I made a vow I'll be there when you want me, some way, somehow. Oh, baby, there ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough, ain't no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you, baby. Oh, no, darling.
No wind, no rain, or winter's cold.
Good afternoon.
Can stop me.
Welcome to Futuromic Tool. To think 61 years ago, a gentleman was driving down a local road here called Groesbeck Highway. He wanted to start a company. A vehicle pulled alongside of him, and he's thinking to himself, geez, I really need to come up with a name. The car that pulled up alongside him was a 1949 Oldsmobile Rocket 88 Futuromic Edition. He thought, oh, that's great. So he started a small company in Hamtramck, Michigan, doing just small odd jobs through continuous investment in the company and facilities and employees, partnering with Macomb County Community College in apprenticeship programs, developing his associates. This is what you stand in today. Thank you very much for being here. I'd like to introduce you to Madam Secretary Hillary Clinton.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I have to tell you, I am thrilled to be here for a number of reasons. First, It's wonderful to be back in Michigan, and you can really feel the energy and dynamism that is driving this state's comeback. And in Detroit, we've got new businesses opening, neighborhoods like Midtown and Eastern Market are coming back. The auto industry just had its best year ever. Over in Ann Arbor, high-tech firms are thriving. The next generation of engineers are getting trained up in Houghton. And here at Futuromic, so well named, you are on the front lines of what I believe will be a true manufacturing renaissance in America. And I just was given a short but exciting tour by Mark Jurak and John Couch, who were telling me about how this company was started as, and for most of its early history, was an auto supply company. And then in 2000, as the market began to change and some of the auto companies began to realign, they were faced with a choice. We all face choices in life, don't we? And this company could have just said, hey, you know, our business is not going to be what it was. We got to just fold up. Let's, you know, just kind of quit. But that's not what happened here. And what happened here is what can happen across America. You are in now what is largely an aerospace company. And because of the workforce and the work ethic and the commitment of Futuromic, you are seeing the future unfold. So I got to see what's happening here to help build the SLS rocket that is going to go from Macomb to Mars. I saw the two halves of an F-35 nose cone waiting to be put together. I talked with some of the workers about the absolute perfection that is required to do this work. And what I believe with all my heart is that what's happening here can happen in so many places if we put our minds to it, if we support advanced manufacturing, if we are the kind of country that once again understands how important it is to build things. We are builders, and we need to get back to building. So we're making progress. None of us can be satisfied until the economic revitalization we're seeing in some parts of Michigan reaches every community, but it is inspiring to see this combination of old-fashioned hard work and cutting-edge innovation. And I know my opponent in this election was here in Michigan about a week ago, and it was like he was in a different place. When he visited Detroit on Monday, he talked only of failure, poverty, and crime. He is missing so much about what makes Michigan great. And the same is true when it comes to our country. He describes America as an embarrassment. He said, and I quote, "We're becoming a third world country." Look around you, my friends. Go visit with the workers building rockets. That doesn't happen in third world countries. Now, we have a lot of urgent and important work to do, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. Because all the people that I have met throughout this campaign really prove how wrong this negative, pessimistic view is. America's best days are still ahead of us if we make up our minds to actually go out and make that happen. Just consider our assets. We have the most dynamic, productive workforce in the world, bar none. We have the most innovative businesses, the top colleges, universities, community colleges, training programs in the world, and the best science and technology. We have enormous capacity for clean energy production. We are resilient, determined, hardworking. There is nothing America can't do if we do it together. And I know this because this is how I was raised. And I don't think Mr. Trump understands any of it. He hasn't offered any credible solutions for the very real economic challenges we face. Now, those challenges emerged long before the Great Recession, and they have persisted through our recovery. There is too much inequality, too little upward mobility. It is just too hard to get ahead today. But there are common sense things that your government could do that would give Americans more opportunities to succeed. Why don't we do it? Because powerful special interests and the tendency to put ideology ahead of political progress have led to gridlock in Congress. And how can you not be frustrated and even angry when you see nothing getting done? And a lot of people feel no one is on their side and no one has their back. And that is not how it's supposed to be in America. If I am fortunate enough to be your president, I will have your back every single day that I serve. And my mission in the White House will be to make our economy work for everyone, not just those at the top. This is personal for me. I am the product of the American middle class. I was born in Chicago. I was raised in a suburb. But my grandfather worked at the Scranton Lace Mill in Scranton, Pennsylvania for 50 years. And because he worked hard, my dad was able to go to college and eventually start his own small business and then send me out into the world to follow my own dreams. No matter how far those dreams have taken me, I have always remembered I am the daughter of a small business owner and the granddaughter of a factory worker, and proud of both. So here's what I want. I want every American family to be able to tell the same story. If you work hard, you do your part, you should be able to give your children all the opportunities they deserve. That is the basic bargain of America. Now, whether we will be able to renew that bargain on even better terms for the 21st century depends in large measure on the outcome of this election. So here are 4 questions that I hope the American people will ask of both candidates, and that the answers should help make your choice in November crystal clear. First, which candidate has a real plan to create good-paying jobs? Second, who will restore fairness to our economy and ensure that those at the top pay their fair share of taxes? Third, who will really go to bat for working families? And fourth, who can bring people together to deliver the results that will make a difference in your lives? Now, I hope that after giving a fair hearing to both sides, you will join the millions of people across our country supporting this campaign, not just Democrats, but a growing number of Republicans and independents as well. Now, when it comes to creating jobs, I would argue it's not even close. Even conservative experts say Trump's agenda will pull our economy back into recession. And according to an independent analysis by a former economic advisor to Senator John McCain, if you add up all of Trump's ideas, from cutting taxes for the wealthy and corporations, to starting a trade war with China, to deporting millions of hardworking immigrants, the result would be a loss of 3.4 million jobs. Now, by contrast, the same analysts found that with our plans, the economy would create more than 10 million new jobs. So let me tell you how we would do that. I believe every American willing to work hard should be able to find a job that provides dignity, pride, and decent pay that can support a family. So starting on day one, we will work with both parties to pass the biggest investment in new, good-paying jobs since World War II. We will put Americans to work, building and modernizing our roads, our bridges, our tunnels, our railways, our ports, our airports. We are way overdue for this, my friends. We are living off the investments that were made by our parents and grandparents' generations. We will also help cities like Detroit and Flint connect underserved neighborhoods to opportunity-expanding, affordable housing, and we will repair schools and failing water systems as well. You know, I happen to think we should be ambitious. While we're at it, let's connect every household in America to broadband by the year 2020. It's astonishing to me how many places in America, not way, way far away from cities, but in cities and near cities that don't have access to broadband. And that disadvantages kids who are asked to do homework using the internet. 5 million of them live in homes without access to the internet. So you talk about an achievement gap, it starts right there. And let's build a cleaner, more resilient power grid with enough renewable energy to power every home in our country as well. Some country is going to be the clean energy superpower of the 21st century and create millions of jobs and businesses. It's probably going to be either China, Germany, or America. I want it to be us. We invent the technology, we should make it and use it and export it, which will help to grow our economy. And here's something that you don't always hear enough of from Democrats. A big part of our plan will be unleashing the power of the private sector to create more jobs at higher pay. And that means for us creating an infrastructure bank to get private funds off the sidelines and complement our private investments. $25 billion in government seed funding could unlock more than $250 billion and really get our country moving on our infrastructure plans. And we're going to invest $10 billion in what we're calling Make It in America partnerships to support American manufacturing and recommit to scientific research that can create entire new industries. When Mark and John were giving me the tour and I was talking to some of the workers along the way, and asking them where some of the precision machinery came from that is being used here at Futuromic, what I hear all over the country, Germany, Japan, Italy, I want to bring that precision manufacturing back to the United States. There is no reason we can't begin to make those machines ourselves and supply the rest of the world instead of buying from somewhere else. Let's also expand incentives like the new market tax credits that can bring businesses, government, and communities together to create good jobs in places that have been left out and left behind. From neglected neighborhoods in Detroit and Flint to logging country, coal country, Native American communities, from rural areas ravaged by addiction and lost jobs to industrial regions hollowed out when factories closed. As president, I will also make a major push to empower small businesses and entrepreneurs with new national initiatives to cut red tape at every level and expand access to credit, especially through community banks and credit unions. I will propose a new plan to dramatically simplify tax filing for small businesses. Right now, the smallest businesses, the kind that my dad had, because it was a really small business, spend 20 times more per employee to prepare their taxes compared to larger companies. It should be as easy as printing out a bank statement. Let's free entrepreneurs to do what they do best: innovate, grow, and hire. As Mark said, this company started because of a drive down a road and thinking about it, talking about it, then seeing one of the old Oldsmobile Futuromics and deciding, hey, not only do I have an idea, I've got a name. In America, if you can dream it, you should be able to build it. And we're going to get back to doing that. Now, Donald Trump has a different view. He's made a career out of stiffing small businesses from Atlantic City to Las Vegas. There are companies that were left hanging because he refused to pay their bills. A lot of those companies scraped together what they could to pay their employees, and many of them put their businesses at risk, and some of them ended up taking bankruptcy. It wasn't because Trump couldn't pay them, it was because he wouldn't pay them. And that's why I take it personally. My dad ran a printing plant. He had two really long tables. He printed fabric for draperies. He would lay out the fabric, and then he would take a silk screen, and he would go down the table. He'd put the silk screen down, he'd pour the paint in, he'd take the squeegee, he'd go across the screen, he'd lift it up, he'd go down, all the way to the end, then he'd start on the other table. He worked hard. And then when he finished, he would load all that fabric up, put it in his car, and take it to the business that had ordered it. Maybe a restaurant or a hotel or some office. He expected to be paid when he showed up. He did the work. He paid for the supplies and the labor that he often hired to help him on big jobs. He expected to be paid. I can't imagine what would have happened to my father and his business if he had gotten a contract from Trump and showing up and submitting his bill had been told we're not going to pay. And if you don't like it, sue us. My father never could have sued a big organization like that. I just don't understand it. I've met all kinds of workers, painters, plumbers. I've met small businesses that provided pianos, installed glass or marble, all of whom were denied payment. And after going back time and again being told, well, maybe we'll pay you 30 cents on the dollar or 50 cents on the dollar. That's not how we do business in America. So we've got to create more good jobs that are going to help more people. For example, our modern service economy is empowering consumers with more choices and greater flexibility, but we do have to empower the workers in our service sector too. The people taking care of our children and our parents, they deserve a good wage and good benefits and a secure retirement. And it's crucial that every American have access to the education and skills they need to get the jobs of the future. So we will fight to make college tuition-free for the middle class and debt-free for everyone. We will also liberate millions of people who already have student debt by making it easier to refinance and repay what you owe as a portion of your income so you don't have to pay more than you can afford. It is just not right that Donald Trump can ignore his debts, but students and families can't refinance their debt. And here's something else that I really want to emphasize. I don't think anybody in America is talking about this enough, and that is a 4-year degree should not be the only path to a good job in America. You should be able to learn a skill, practice a trade, make a good living doing it. So many Americans have the talent and the will to succeed, whether they're kids right out of high school or older people displaced by automation and outsourcing. And for too long, big promises about the power of training and retraining haven't delivered like they should. It doesn't help anybody to be trained for a job that doesn't exist. So here's what we're going to do. We will support high-quality union training programs. We will propose new tax credits to encourage more companies to offer paid apprenticeships that let you earn while you learn. We will do more, including a national campaign to dignify skills training across the board. I think we've got to reverse what has become a kind of, commonplace view, which is everybody needs to go to college. Well, in fact, more than half of the jobs that are going to be available in 2020 do not require a college 4-year degree. So, for welders and machinists and tool and die makers and health technicians and coders and so many others, let's get the word out. There are really good jobs for people right now, and there will be more in the future if you get the skills in high school, at community college, in an apprenticeship, or other training program. And I want to acknowledge the great role that the community college here in Macomb County has played in working with companies like this one to make sure people do have the skills. Now, I imagine some of you might be thinking, well, that all sounds good, but what about trade? After all, Trump talks about it all the time. Well, let's start with this. It is true that too often past trade deals have been sold to the American people with rosy scenarios that did not pan out. Those promises now ring hollow in many communities across Michigan and our country that have seen factories close and jobs disappear. Too many companies lobbied for trade deals so they could sell products abroad, but then they instead moved abroad and sold back into the United States. It is also true that China and other countries have gamed the system for too long. Enforcement, particularly during the Bush administration, has been too lax. Investments at home that would make us more competitive have been completely blocked in Congress, and American workers and communities have paid the price. But the answer is not to rant and rave or cut ourselves off from the world. That would end up killing even more jobs. The answer is to finally make trade work for us, not against us. So my message to every worker in Michigan and across America is this: I will stop any trade deal that kills jobs or holds down wages, including the Trans-Pacific Partnership. I oppose it now, I'll oppose it after the election, and I'll oppose it as president. As a senator from New York, I fought to defend New York's manufacturers and steelmakers from unfair Chinese trading practices, and I opposed the only multilateral trade deal that came before the Senate while I was there because it didn't meet my high bar. And as Secretary of State, I fought hard for American businesses to get a fair shot around the world and to stop underhanded trading practices like currency manipulation and the theft of intellectual property. So as president, I will stand up to China and anyone else who tries to take advantage of American workers and companies. And I'm going to ramp up enforcement by appointing, for the first time, a chief trade prosecutor. I will triple the number of enforcement officers, and when countries break the rules, we won't hesitate to impose targeted tariffs. Now, Mr. Trump may talk a big game on trade, but his approach is based on fear, not strength. Fear that we can't compete with the rest of the world, even when the rules are fair. Fear that our country has no choice but to hide behind walls. If Team USA was as fearful as Trump, Michael Phelps and Simone Biles would be cowering in the locker room, afraid to come out to compete. Instead, they're winning gold medals. America isn't afraid to compete. Right now, thousands of Michigan companies are exporting billions of dollars of products around the world. We want them to sell even more and create even more jobs here at home. But corporations should not abandon profitable operations here in the United States to move abroad just to give shareholders a quicker return, CEOs a bigger bonus, and unions a weaker hand to play. Now, before he tweets, about how he's really the one who will put America first in trade, let's remember where Trump makes many of his own products, because it sure is not America. He's made Trump ties in China and Trump suits in Mexico instead of here in Michigan. He keeps saying it's not possible to make these things in America anymore, and that's just wrong. So we created a website, HillaryClinton.com/makeithere. On it, we list 100 places across the United States that are already producing similar goods. Now, one positive thing Trump could do to make America great again is actually make great things in America again. So, now let's look at the second question. Which candidate will fight for fairness? And this is an urgent need. We need to grow the economy, and we need to make it fairer. The tide is not rising fast enough, and it is certainly not lifting all boats. Since the crash, too many of the gains have gone to the top 1%. The rules and incentives in our system reward corporations for putting short-term stock prices above long-term investments in their workers, equipment, and research. While corporate profits are at near record highs, paychecks for most people have barely budged. Incomes aren't growing fast enough to keep up with the costs of living, like prescription drugs and child care. I believe that every employee, from the CEO suite to the factory floor, contributes to a business's success. So everybody should share in the rewards, especially those putting in long hours for little pay. So I'm proposing a new tax credit to encourage more companies to share profits with workers. And more broadly, we will fight for a more progressive, more patriotic tax code that puts American jobs first. Right now, when a corporation outsources jobs and production, it can write off the costs. We must stop that, and we must make them pay back any tax breaks they ever received from any level of government in our country. And for those that move their headquarters overseas to avoid paying their fair share of taxes, they're going to have to pay a new exit tax. So if they want to go, they're going to have to pay to go. And Wall Street corporations and the super rich should finally pay their fair share of taxes. That's why I support the so-called Buffett rule, because multimillionaires should not be able to pay a lower tax rate than their secretaries. We should also add a new tax on multimillionaires, crack down on tax gaming by corporations, and close the carried interest loophole, something I've advocated for years. Now, compare what Trump says. Now, there is a myth out there that he will stick it to the rich and powerful because somehow he's really on the side of the little guy. Don't believe it. Not when he pledges to rip up basic rules that hold corporations accountable, when he wants to scrap regulations that stop polluters from poisoning the air our children breathe and the water we drink, let insurance companies write their own rules again. Trump would roll back the tough rules that we have imposed on the financial industry. I'll do the opposite. I think we should strengthen those rules so Wall Street can never wreck Main Street again. Trump even wants to abolish the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, a new agency that has already returned more than $11 billion to 25 million Americans who were taken advantage of by corporations. Why would you get rid of that? And then there is Trump's tax plan. He would give trillions in tax cuts to big corporations, millionaires, and Wall Street money managers. That would explode our national debt and eventually lead to massive cuts in priorities like education, health care, and environmental protection. In his speech on Monday, he called for a new tax loophole. Let's call it the Trump loophole, because it would allow him to pay less than half the current tax rate on income from many of his companies. He'd pay a lower rate than millions of middle-class families. One nonpartisan expert at the Tax Policy Center described this plan as, and I quote, a really nice deal for Donald Trump. Of course, it's hard to say how nice, because he refuses to do what every other presidential candidate in decades has done and release his tax returns. But we do know that the 400 richest taxpayers in America would get an average tax cut of more than $15 million a year from the Trump loophole. And then there's the estate tax, which Trump wants to eliminate altogether. Now, if you believe that he's as wealthy as he says, that alone would save the Trump family $4 billion. It would do nothing for 99.8% of Americans. So they'd get a $4 billion tax cut, and 99.8% of Americans would get nothing. Just think of what we could do with those $4 billion. We could pay for more than 47,000 veterans to get a 4-year college degree. We could provide a year's worth of health care to nearly 3 million kids. Or we could fund a year's worth of federal assistance to state and local law enforcement. I think there are a lot of better ways to spend the money. On Monday, I'm going to be in Scranton, Pennsylvania with Vice President Biden. And he has a saying, don't tell me what you value, show me your budget and I will tell you what you value. Well, Donald Trump wants to give trillions in tax breaks to people like himself. I want to invest it in veterans, our kids, our police officers, and so much more. And you can then draw your own conclusion about values. Now, it's true that both of us have proposed to cut taxes for middle-class families. He's making a big promise. But his advisors have said, his own advisors have said, he may not stand by them. Instead, the tax cuts he doubled down on in his speech in Detroit on Monday offer trillions to the richest Americans and corporations. And one of the differences between Donald Trump and me is I'm telling you what I will do, I'm laying out my plans, and I will stand by them and want you to hold me accountable for delivering results. You know, this all reminds me of that old saying, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And that brings us to the third question. Which candidate can you actually count on to go to bat for workers and working families? It is not enough to pay lip service to being on your side. We have to recognize how Americans actually live and work in the 21st century and then offer real solutions that make your lives easier. We know that women are now the sole or primary breadwinner in a growing number of families. We know more Americans are cobbling together part-time work or striking out on their own. So we have to make it easier to be good workers, good parents, and good caregivers all at the same time. That's why I've set out a bold vision to make quality, affordable child care available to all Americans and limit the cost to 10% of family income. On Monday, Trump offered his first real ideas on this topic because previously he had dismissed concerns about child care. He said it was, quote, not an expensive thing because you just need some blocks and some swings. Now he says he wants to exclude child care payments from taxation. His plan was panned from the left, the right, the center, because it transparently is designed for rich people like him. He would give wealthy families 30 or 40 cents on the dollar for their nannies and little or nothing for millions of hardworking families trying to afford child care so that they can get to work and keep the job. I think instead we should expand the child tax credit to provide real relief to tens of millions of working families struggling with the costs of raising children, the same families that his plan ignores. And that's just a start, because the more we do to help working families, the more our entire economy will benefit. For example, guaranteeing equal pay won't just increase paychecks for women, it will boost family budgets and get incomes rising across the board. And I don't understand why Trump's against that. Paid family leave won't only make life easier for moms and dads, it will also keep skilled, talented Americans in the workforce and grow our economy. That's why every other advanced country already has it. Again, he's against it. Raising the federal minimum wage won't just put more money in the pockets of low-income families, it also means they will spend more at the businesses in their neighborhoods. This is something that even the original automakers understood way back at the beginning of the 20th century when they decided to pay the unbelievable sum of $5 a day to auto workers. And when they were criticized by other businesses, how can you pay that much? They had the best answer: we want people to be able to buy our cars. This is economics 101. We need to get incomes and wages rising, and it will help the whole economy grow and be fairer. And protecting and expanding Social Security doesn't just help older Americans retire with dignity, it helps to ease burdens on families and communities. And I also believe the same thing about comprehensive immigration reform. We already have millions of people working in the economy and paying $12 billion a year to Social Security, even though they are undocumented. So by moving toward reform, we will unleash a lot of new income and growth, and we will level the playing field so that American workers can't be taken advantage of because undocumented workers can be exploited by employers, which is one of the reasons we have this disconnect. And finally, strengthening unions doesn't just serve members, it leads to better pay and benefits and working conditions for all employees. So I've also said I will defend and improve the Affordable Care Act, and for me that includes giving Americans in every state the choice of a public option health insurance plan that will help everybody afford coverage. It will strengthen competition and drive down costs. Now, these are all causes I've worked on for decades, and I believe they point to a fundamental truth about our economy. It can seem like a zero-sum when you are competing for a job, a promotion, or a contract, if someone wins and someone loses, but that is not the full picture. If you step back, you'll see we're all in this together. If we can grow together, we can all rise together. Because you know what I like to say, we are stronger together, and that's why the fourth question is key, and it's this: who can bring people together to get any of this done? Right? Well, I believe I can, because I think I can provide serious, steady leadership that can find common ground and build on it based on hard but respectful bargaining with the other side. Leadership that rises above personal attacks and name-calling, not revels in it. I just don't think insults and bullying is how we're going to get things done. And I don't think that that's the appropriate approach for us. I know it's hard to imagine, but there was a time when Democrats and Republicans actually worked together. I know that's true. I did it as First Lady, Senator, and Secretary of State. It's how we created the Children's Health Insurance Program, which covers 8 million kids. It's how we rebuilt New York after 9/11, and how we passed a treaty reducing the threat from Russia's nuclear weapons. So I am convinced, based on my experience, that we can do this. And one of the reasons that I asked Senator Tim Kaine to be my running mate is that he also has a record of working across the aisle to get things done as a mayor, a governor, and a senator. So we're going to make full use of the White House's power to convene. We're going to get everyone at the table, not just Republicans and Democrats, but businesses and labor unions, academics, experts, but most importantly, Americans like all of you. I think there are a lot of great ideas out in America, and I want you to have a say in your government, and that means We've got to get unaccountable money out of politics, overturn Citizens United, and expand voting rights, not restrict them. I intend, starting even before the election, to bring together leaders from across our economy, from a lot of different places, to talk about jobs and competitiveness. And I hope Mark and John can join me, because we need the best ideas that are out there making a difference. We need to pull together. The bottom line is this. I'm running for president to build an economy that works for everyone, not the top. And based on what we know from the Trump campaign, he wants America to work for him and his friends at the expense of everyone else. He's offered no credible plans to address what working families are up against today. Nothing on student loans or the cost of prescription drugs, nothing for farmers or struggling rural communities, nothing to build a new future with clean energy and advanced agriculture, nothing for communities of color in our cities to overcome the barriers of systemic racism, nothing to create new opportunities for young people, just a more extreme version of the failed theory of trickle-down economics with his own addition of outlandish Trumpian ideas that even Republicans reject. And as we heard him say at his convention, he may believe that he alone can fix our country, but clearly he doesn't know the people of Michigan. He doesn't see the businesses and the labor unions, the local governments, the clergy coming together every single day to make things better. So yes, there is still a long road ahead, but Michigan is on the rise and everyone is contributing. That's America at its best. So I hope you will stay active and engaged in working together to create jobs and to strengthen your own communities. And I hope you will work to get out the vote in November, because if we are able to win, then I want you all to work with me to build the kind of progress that America deserves to see. We're going to do this together. We are stronger together. Let's go out and build the future. Thank you all. God bless you.
All right, guys, that's the end of this Hillary Clinton event in Warren, Michigan. And earlier today, her running mate, Tim Kaine, also spoke. New Orleans Progressive Baptist Convention. Tim Kaine speaking in New Orleans. Let's watch.
Progressive family. And good morning, Progressive family. And what a blessing it is again to be here in the context of our 55th annual session as the Progressive National Baptist Convention. Why don't you thank God for 55 years of work and witness as the Progressive family? And all week long we have been talking about the importance of our educating our constituents around the issues that are involved in this upcoming election. And all week long we have been developing strategies for you to take back to your respective churches, cities, and states so that we can get more people registered to vote. We want to remember the progressive factor. If we do our part, if we get enough new people registered, educated, mobilized, and get them to the polls, we can make that difference in the outcome of this election. Amen. We are delighted this morning to have Vice Presidential candidate Senator Tim Kaine with us. And Senator Kaine has virtually been involved in politics almost all of his life and his career. He has been the mayor of Richmond, Virginia. He has been the governor of the state of Virginia. And now he is the senator from the state of Virginia. He also served as the chairman of the Democratic National Committee. So he knows politics inside and out, from the bottom all the way up to the top. But more importantly, I was a little concerned really when I invited him here until I discovered that church wouldn't scare him. As a matter of fact, while we walked in and you were singing so beautifully, he said, "This is one of my favorite songs." He is a member of the Catholic faith and belongs to a Catholic church there in Richmond, Virginia, and he sings tenor in his choir. Amen. Isn't that wonderful? I asked him if he would treat us to a solo, but he wants to leave that up to the Spirit. In an NPR interview that I happened to have heard him give on a few days ago, he mentioned that his wife's father was the governor of the state of Virginia and was responsible for desegregating the public school system. He indicated that he told a story about how a young African-American girl saw in a magazine where a certain apartment was available, but when she went, she called first and to find out whether or not the apartment was available, and the person said yes, but when she went, because she was African-American, then they said, "Oh no, she went back to work and asked one of her girlfriends, co-workers, a white young lady, to check it out. And of course she went and she received and could have the apartment. And that became his first case in discrimination. Senator Kaine is a progressive Baptist because he's always fought for the rights of people and fought against discrimination in any form and in any way. I want you to give a rounding, progressive welcome to the next Vice President of the United States of America, Senator Tim Kaine.
Thank you and good morning. What a warm welcome. Thank you, PNBC. And thank you, Dr. Perkins. Please have a seat. It's good to be in the service one more time. It is good to be in the service one more time. I do sing in my church choir at St. Elizabeth's Catholic Church, not so often because for some reason I have a hard time making practice night these days, but that is one of my favorite songs, and I thought about that walking in. One of the reasons it's so favorite is it's got the double meaning. It's always good to be in a church service, but it is also always good to be of service, and that is what PNBC has been doing for 55 years, and that's why I'm so proud to be with you today. I'll begin with thanking Dr. Perkins for his leadership with PNBC and his leadership in Detroit. Will you allow me to claim a little bit of Dr. Perkins as somebody whose parents are buried in Virginia and his 4 sisters live in Virginia? We feel a connection to Dr. Perkins in Richmond. And so, Dr. Perkins, it's great to make that connection. And as I walked in, you know how there's no accidents in life, and I heard the choir sing in total praise. When I was inaugurated as the 70th governor of Virginia, I asked my church choir to sing that song at the church service at Bruton Parish in Williamsburg. And so when I heard that coming in, I got goosebumps. That is a song we love at St. Elizabeth's. Thanks to all of you. You're working hard to ensure so much in terms of the progressive values that are the values of Scripture, the passages in the Bible, Old Testament and New, that speak to the values of the PNBC are infinite, and every day they challenge us. I want to thank your General Secretary, Dr. Tim Boddy, who is from the Commonwealth of Virginia, and I know a relative of his, a dear friend of mine who was my pastor at St. Elizabeth's, Reverend John Boddy, who died a couple years ago, is connected to that great Virginia family. First Vice President, Dr. Stewart, Second Vice President, David Peoples, and all the officers and all dignitaries who are here. There's a number of elected officials. I think the mayor was supposed to be here, but maybe coming later, but I did have a chance to visit with State Senator Karen Carter-Peterson. Could you give her and all elected officials who are here a round of applause? There is somebody here today from the Clinton-Kaine campaign, Reverend Zena Pierre. Many of you know her. She's from Annapolis, Maryland, and she is the National African American Faith Outreach Director for the campaign. And Zena is right there. I hope we'll all get a chance to know her. I want to extend thanks to Reverend Otis Moss Jr., who's not with us, but the vision that led him and others to create the movement is, and you're carrying it forward. And many people are grateful, and everybody, whether they realize it or not, needs you to carry it forward. Great leaders from other Christian traditions. Bishop John Bryan of the AME Church, Dr. Freddie Haynes of Friendship West Baptist Church in Dallas. I met officials with the NBC who are here. This is a broad family. In my house there are many rooms, right? So it's a broad family, but we can all be together. And quite a few preachers who are either in Virginia now or because of a theological training either in Lynchburg or in Richmond at Virginia Union have Virginia roots. And so I welcome all the Virginians who are here. We've got a long tradition in Virginia of visionary Baptists fighting for justice. Nat Turner, John Jasper, Nanny Burroughs, one of my personal favorites, Vernon Johns, still active, Wyatt T. Walker. This great prophetic pro-social justice Baptist tradition is an amazing part of who we are. And the leaders that I mentioned led not during the easy times, but during the hard times. Slavery, massive resistance, Jim Crow, the battle against the civil rights movement. In Virginia, we produced a lot of leaders early in our nation's history, but then we decided that principle of equality that a Virginian had set out ahead of us like a North Star, instead of marching toward it, for an awful lot of our history, we decided to march away from it or pretend like it wasn't our value. And it was these ministers, these progressive Baptists that I mentioned, who kept pulling us in the better direction. And in the tough times when things weren't going their way, they always kept the faith. They kept spreading Jesus' message of love and reconciliation, and they never stopped seeking the kingdom of heaven, and not just in the by and by, but we're called to try to reproduce in our own imperfect way as much as we can the kingdom of heaven right here on earth. And that's a proud tradition that continues in the work that you do, being a voice for the voiceless, standing up for people's rights, and particularly in an election season, making sure that everybody can participate, registering voters and making sure that people can get over the hurdles and the barriers that some want to put in their way so that they can participate in one of the most solemn things we do, which is the ability to choose our own leaders rather than have somebody else foist leaders upon us. It's not just a right, it's a responsibility. It's a deep moral responsibility. And when we think of so many people in the world who don't have the opportunity to live in societies where they can participate or pick their own leaders, when we do that, we're not only doing something good for our country, we're spreading hope to people who need that hope around the world. Voting is a sacred act, whether you're religious or not. And over the years, this community has provided a spiritual home to spectacular ministers, Dr. Martin Luther King, Reverend Jesse Jackson, so good to see you here, Reverend Jackson, and so many of you that are gathered here. This is a spiritual home. And a church isn't a building. A church is not a building. A church is a collection of people. It's a spiritual home. And it's a place that gives solace and strength, refuge and restoration, and we all need restoration, and that provides comfort. It's precious. I know that from my own life. I have been blessed to have several spiritual homes, starting, as with so many of us, with the faith of our fathers and mothers. I grew up in Kansas City. My mom was a home ec teacher and housewife. My dad ran a union-organized ironworking shop in the stockyards of Kansas City. They lived their faith. They weren't big talkers. They didn't like to lecture. They didn't like to give advice. They kind of believed in something that Pope Francis says a lot: preach the gospel, use words if necessary. They wanted us to absorb the example, and we did, the golden rule. We learned from my folks about service, about faith, about kindness, thanks to their example. Then I went to a high school run by the Jesuit Order of the Catholic Church. The motto of the school, as many Jesuit high schools around this country, it was men for others. It was a boys' school, students for others when the schools are co-ed, but it was the emphasis on for others, for others. I knew right away, under the tutelage of my teachers and my parents, I wanted to be a man for others. I was a kid. I didn't know what that meant, but I wanted to be that person that I heard them describing, somebody who fought for the rights of others, had others back, would stand up for others, especially if others wouldn't. It's one thing to say that, one thing to think that, another thing to, as a young person, figure out how to do it, and that took me a while. I went through Mizzou in 3 years, went to Harvard Law School, but just found myself not really sure what I wanted to do with my life and how I wanted to take that internal commitment and put it into action. So I left Harvard in the middle of law school, took a year to volunteer with missionaries in Honduras, Jesuit missionaries, where I ran a school that taught these poor kids in El Progreso, Honduras, how to be welders and carpenters. The Jesuits said to me, "You're volunteering, you're at Harvard Law School. That's completely irrelevant to anything we're doing." "What else do you know?" I said, "Well, my dad ran an ironworking shop." He said, "Now that is actually going to have some practical value." So I ran this Instituto Técnico Loyola and ran it and taught kids to be welders and carpenters. But it was more than just an experience of being a teacher. I probably went there because of the still small voice that said, "I don't know what I want to do. I need to figure it out. I need to make sure that the faith of my fathers is not my faith just because the people told me it should be." I had to grapple with it with fear and trembling and kind of make it my own. So that was part of the reason I went. And in Honduras, I found a spiritual energy, a spiritual refuge that has lasted throughout my life. Mass was different in Honduras than it was growing up. I would go to a suburban parish in Kansas City where sometimes it seemed like the key to it was the Mass had to be over in 45 minutes so the parking lot could empty and the parking lot could fill for the next 45-minute Mass. And it was cut and dry, beautiful in some ways, but it just wasn't completely what I wanted. But in Honduras, as I would travel with missionaries, sometimes by mule, through villages, the Mass would be 2.5 or 3 hours long. There'd be 4 or 5 baptisms, 3 weddings. It would be kids and everybody all in together. Music was simple but beautiful. Sermons were challenging sermons that made you really look yourself in the mirror. And it made me think that I don't want a worship service that is a transactional box checker on Sunday morning. I want a worship service that's not transactional but transformational. And we shall not all sleep, but we shall be changed. Right? We shall reform your lives. I had slept in church before. I mean, I gotta acknowledge I had slept in church before. But that promise of change, that promise of reform your lives, I mean, that's challenging, and that's what I saw in Honduras. It stayed with me. I went back to Harvard, got my law degree, met a beautiful social justice fighter, my wife Ann, who was and remains a better negotiator, and that's why I've been in Virginia for 32 years. And we moved back to her home state, Richmond, where we found a vibrant and transformational church, St. Elizabeth's Catholic Church in Highland Park. We were married there 32 years ago. Our kids were baptized and grew up there. I mean, we grew up there. We were kids when we got married and started in that church, and 32 years later, it's still our spiritual home. I was in Honduras struck with the MLK reference. The most segregated hour of the week is 11 o'clock Sunday morning, and that was a challenge to me. And so I've made my spiritual home in a neighborhood where we're not segregated. In fact, we were, when we started there, one of a few white families in that church. It's now a very well-integrated church, but it was important to, especially I think the burden is on those of us who are in a majority, you know, Caucasians here. We got to put ourselves in situations where we're in the minority and come to understand a reality that's different than the one that we just take for granted every day. We have to. I learned this in Honduras, and I've learned it again in Richmond, just from my perspective, which is not an omniscient one, but just from my perspective, that if you're in a minority in this country, you kind of have to learn the ways of the majority just to survive. Just to survive. But if you're in a majority, you can go through your whole life and not have to learn the ways of anybody other than you. That's right. And that's not saying that there's malice there, but you can just be walled off, separated, segregated on the other side of town and move with people like you and never have to grapple with the reality that's different than your own. And one of the beautiful things that has been transformational about my church is that by being there, I've had to grapple with, understand, listen to, learn from, confront realities that are not necessarily the ones that were my own, but over time have become more a part of me. Hillary Clinton asked me 20 days ago to be her running mate. Not that I'm counting. It was at 7:32 Friday night, July 22nd. Not that I'm counting. We went right to Miami for the rally, and then the very next day, Ann and I were back home at St. Elizabeth's. We sat in our normal pew, a little bit back on the right-hand side. They did a communion song that I know, so even though I'm not in the choir anymore, they asked me to come up and sing it, and we asked that day for people's prayers because we need them. We need them. And we felt lifted up by them, and that's the kind of respite and replenishment that my church and our community has offered Ann and I and our 3 kids for years. It's precious to us, just like the faith communities you serve are precious to all of your congregants and beyond, not just your congregants, their families and your visitors, the people who just come once when they're from out of town, or maybe just come once, but they have a seed planted that then can grow into something sometimes soon, sometimes takes a while. We all know that faith, and that's why you gather, as important as that service is, proud to be in the service, it's not just about the service, the Sunday service, it's about what we do. Do we walk out of the door and live it? Ann and I have decided, my wife Ann is a great battler, legal aid lawyer, juvenile court judge, foster care reformer, now Secretary of Education in Virginia, just stepped down to be full-time on the campaign trail. We, a long time ago, decided, and maybe it was because we live in Richmond, a city with a history, a city with some scar tissue, we decided that our work would be reconciliation. That would be our mission in life, that we would work to heal divisions that threaten to tear communities apart. You know, I come from a place where there's been an awful lot of division. I come from a place where there's been an awful lot of, you know, sadly, successful attempts to divide people one against another. Most of the first 10 presidents of this country were Virginians. A lot of the first vice presidents were for Virginians, but I'm the first Virginian on a national ticket in 107 years, and that's not an accident. That's not an accident. The generation of Virginians that were smart enough to put out ideas like equality and the Constitution, they were leading the nation. But then by about 1840, clinging to the old ways of slavery and clinging to the old ways of separation had moved Virginia off the main stage into the shadows, frankly, kind of into an irrelevant place in history. We didn't live like we said we would. We called ourselves a commonwealth. The wealth we hold in common. We didn't live that way. We didn't let people around the table. And that moved Virginia aside, and my wife was very struck by that, and so was I. So as a youngster, I started my law practice, and it was focused on civil rights. It was for 17 years. For 17 years. Dr. Perkins told you about my first case. I had a young woman who came into my office. I was the 12th lawyer at the bottom of the totem pole. So when a do-good case comes in, it's like, hey, let him try it. You know, hey, there's a do-good case. Let the new guy try it. So I had been there just briefly. This young woman's name was Lorraine. She was about my age, just like me, starting her career after finishing school. We were so similar. For me, going out and looking for my first apartment and starting my life after finishing school was an upbeat, positive experience of going out into the big wide world to see what I could make of myself. Well, Lorraine was in the same place, but her experience wasn't the positive experience I had. She saw the ad, an apartment she liked in a neighborhood she liked. She made a call. The landlord said, sure, come right over on your lunch hour. The place is still available. Then 90 minutes later, she goes over. The landlord takes a look at her and says, oh, I'm sorry, the apartment just got rented. So she goes back and she asks the colleague who sits next door, a Caucasian friend, hey, call over this landlord. And the landlord said, sure, oh, the place is available, come right over. And that was it. It was a slam dunk case. There are cases that are hard to win. That was not a case that was hard to win. We filed a federal fair housing action against the owner of that apartment, and that started me into 17 years of doing civil rights work, largely in the area of housing, largely for people either because of race or disability who had been turned down. But I will say the lesson I learned from that I carry through with me to today was how different we were and how similar we were, Lorraine and me. Again, the same young people starting a career. I had a good experience renting my apartment in Richmond when I was moving from out of town. She had a bad experience. And it wasn't just a bad experience today, it made her worried about tomorrow. It made her worried about, well, what about the next time I go out? Am I going to face this again? To have to walk around with that anxiety on your shoulders, which I've never had to walk around with that anxiety on my shoulders. If people have treated me bad in my life, it was either because they were a jerk or I deserved it. I mean, you know, I never got treated bad in my life because of my skin color or my gender, I'll tell you that. It was either because they were a jerk or because I deserved it. But if you're walking through life and you're worried that somebody's going to treat me bad based on something I can't change about myself, I can't change it about myself. And that made me just so focused on this work. And I think this is one of the reasons that Hillary Clinton asked me to be her running mate, because she was impressed in the same way. Some of you know this story. She was a Midwestern Methodist church kid. Now, I know a lot of those Midwestern Methodist church kids growing up, and there's a beautiful sense of duty. Sometimes we talk about duty now as if it's a bad word. It's not a bad word. It's a good word. It's a good word. There's a sense of duty about the Midwestern Methodist church kids that I knew. And Hillary Clinton had a great youth pastor who took her in Chicago to see Reverend King, who talked to her about migrant worker issues beyond what she had experienced. And then that opened her up to the fact that there were issues out there she needed to grapple with. So as a law student, she went to work for Marion Wright Edelman at the Children's Defense Fund. She went to Dothan, Alabama to expose and investigate school segregation. After she graduated, she went to Yale. She could have gone to Wall Street. She could have gone anywhere, but she went to work for the Children's Defense Fund to defend the right of young people in South Carolina's juvenile justice system. I think a lot of you know Hillary very well, either from her time in Arkansas, her time as First Lady, her time as Senator, her time as Secretary of State. That Methodist connection, that beautiful sense of duty, the obligation to others, that is the root of everything she does. We saw that at the Democratic Convention. I think Hillary shares another Midwestern trait with me, which is her natural mode isn't to talk about herself. Now, I like to talk. I wouldn't be a senator if I didn't. But talking about myself, I sometimes have a little hard time, and she definitely does. But you saw her daughter Chelsea tell her story in a wonderful and beautiful way. And you saw her talk about her career of battling, especially for families and kids. And after the speeches and the balloons fell, Reverend Bill Shalady, who's one of her pastors, took the stage. And as he was praying, we were backstage, Hillary, Bill, my wife Ann, and me, holding hands. And we were listening to this prayer, and he quoted words of John Wesley, do all the good we can by all the means we can to all the people we can as long as ever we can. And what a moment for us to be standing there holding hands and hearing those words. This is Hillary Clinton's creed, and it's mine too. And it's what I have done, but more importantly, it's what I want to do. These principles have guided me in every office I've ever held, and if I have the honor of representing you as the next Vice President of the country, they will be the principles that will guide me. Now, I get a little nervous talking about Scripture in a room full of very doctrinally advanced ministers and believers. But, you know, hey, what the heck? What the heck? A story in the Bible that I just endlessly return to, and that's one of the great things about the Bible, that you might read something today that doesn't speak to you, but a different season in life it will speak to you, and then at a different season in life it'll speak to you again, but in a different way, I go back again and again to the wisdom in the book of Job. You know how it starts? It's a debate between God and the devil. And God is basically, here's Job, person who's faithful to his principles, much beloved, has done well, family, riches, but more than that, respect. People look up to him. And the devil's view is, this guy is only faithful because he has stuff. I mean, it's easy to be faithful, maybe. It's easy to be virtuous if everything's going your way. If he loses it, then you're going to see that he's not that faithful. So God and the devil make a wager. And Job loses everything. Money, health, family. And then the talkers start in on Job. You know, they're like, this guy's losing everything. He clearly has done something wrong. He clearly has gotten afoul of God in some way. And that would be our conventional interpretation, often to kind of blame the victim mentality. That something's not going right because that person hadn't done something right. And Job gets mad. He shows it's okay to argue with God. There's nothing wrong with arguing with God. Job does it. But in the midst of all the argument and even challenging God, he holds on to his faith. He remains true to his principles. And in the end, everything Job loses is restored, and then some. And then some. The reason I returned to the Job story at this season in my life at age 58, there were other pieces of it that made me into it earlier in my life, but it is such a radical, radical view of what suffering is about, right? Because the way humans think of suffering is we often will blame the victim, or suffering is about the past. Actions in the past conspired together to lead to this thing, whatever the suffering is today, whatever the evil is today. Job doesn't suffer because he's evil. He doesn't suffer because of his mistakes. It's not about blaming the victim. His suffering isn't about the past at all. His suffering is about the future. His suffering is about the future. It like destroys the human philosophical concepts of causality. The suffering is not about the past, it's about the future. Suffering tests him to see, will he remain true to principle? Will he remain true to faith? And that's the test that we have to respond to today. How will we respond to the suffering and the pain and the challenges we see in our life? Will we blame the victim? Will we assume it's a natural consequence of all these things that went before? Or will we see it as a challenge to us to do something different tomorrow? Will we see it as something that's about the future? We've seen progress in recent years. I am a proud supporter of our president. I was one of the first to sign on to the Obama campaign in October of 2006, before it was a campaign. And we've seen progress under our great president. Since the lowest point of the recession, we've created more than 14 million new private sector jobs. Since the height of unemployment, we've cut the unemployment rate in half. This president has not gotten the credit on the economy or on anything else that he deserves. And President Obama also shares that Hillary Clinton trait of he's not going to be going around doing a lot of bragging. That's just not his natural thing. But I don't mind bragging a little bit on some of the things that he's done, and I think we should be proud of what he has done. But he would say, and we all would say, okay, progress, we've made it, we need to acknowledge it, but there's still so much to be done, and there is still so much suffering. And so we have to decide, like Job, how are we going to respond? Are we going to respond by changing our principles, abandoning our principles, or are we going to respond by remaining true to them? How do we respond when 10 years after Katrina, progress has been made, but the Ninth Ward still has boarded up houses? And we have them in Richmond, too. And we have them in cities all over this country. And we have them in Appalachia. We have them in rural communities all over this country. How do we respond when kids in Flint are drinking poisonous waters? And Flint is the tip of the iceberg on this. Infrastructure in our central cities hadn't been updated for too long, and so that's an issue, whether it's lead paint or poor water supplies, that people feel all over the country. How do we respond when African American men face a greater prospect of prison during their lifetimes? It is such a powerful thing. Or when African American women make 64 cents on the dollar for every dollar a white man earns. How do we respond when churchgoers during a Bible study get gunned down by a senseless act of racial violence in North Charleston? You know, how do we respond? How do we respond? Well, Felicia Sanders survived the massacre at Mother Emanuel AME Church, and how do you do what she did? Days later, just days later, she not only forgave the man who murdered her son, Tywanza. Here's what she said: "Hate destroys those who harbor it, and I refuse to let hate destroy me." Wow. That was her response. What's ours? Well, my answer is, and I know that it is yours, when we're faced with injustice, you got to name it. That's to begin. No sugarcoating or whitewashing. You got to name it, and you have to fight it, and you have to remain true to principles: justice, love, mercy, freedom, the basic principles that led to the formation of this organization in 1961. The need to build what Dr. King has called the beloved community, where all are equal, all are included, all are connected. That's what we meant when we said we were a commonwealth in Virginia. We kind of bragged a little bit. Instead of just saying we're a state, we say we're a commonwealth. We're saying we're going to live that way, but that's an everyday challenge for us to do live that way, to build that community. Hillary's been working to build it for a very long time, and in my own humble way, I've been doing it too. Hillary's been fighting for kids and for families, and that's why throughout this campaign she's been focused on breaking down the barriers that hold people back, like systemic racism, the kind that I've seen in Virginia, the kind that I've seen elsewhere, and I've seen it from third hand. You understand it in a different and more profound and more intimate way. She's spoken frankly about the work that all Americans have to do, and I will say especially white Americans. White Americans, I thank God for what I see out there, that the outright racial hostility, feelings of white supremacy, racial superiority are not what they were. We're getting over that. There are still those who harbor it deeply in violent ways. We see that every day, but I do believe we're making progress. But just making progress past overt feelings of racial superiority isn't enough if it's easy for people to just live their own lives and never be confronted or have to challenge with other people's lives. And that's why it's so important for those of us in a majority to get out of our comfort zone and learn other realities. And that's what Hillary and I both kind of challenge our Caucasian leaders and Caucasian communities to do. She's made it clear that taking on these inequities is one of the most important tasks of being our next president, and I think that's one of the reasons she asked me to accompany her. Because my civil rights background and being a mayor in a city that's 60% minority and having a reputation for being fair and learning and growing along the way as I listen is something that she wanted to include on this ticket. Hillary has proposed a comprehensive commitment to equity and opportunity for African American communities. A real plan. Check it out, HillaryClinton.com. The details are there. You know, her opponent just says, when asked about the details, believe me. Well, I mean, believe me. Anybody running for the job ought to be willing to share the details. She said it in the convention. You know, if it's about your kid or it's about your job or it's about your community, it's not a detail, it's kind of a big deal, actually. So she has shared the details, a plan to create millions of good-paying jobs, hundreds of billions of dollars invested in cities like New Orleans and Richmond and our cities across this country. If you invest, just say, let's just use Flint as an example. Say we invest in infrastructure improvements to improve water quality across the country. We will do three things. We will immediately hire people to do the investments. Then we will create safer situations for kids and families who will grow up healthier and more productive because of that. And then those investments in a water system will last 40 or 50 years, so it raises your entire platform for economic success for decades. You do the same thing with roads and rail and airports and our infrastructure all across this country. You hire people and you raise our standard of living. $20 billion of the Clinton plan is aimed specifically at creating jobs for young people so that they start off the right way with getting the examples of what it takes to succeed in jobs. We were talking before we came in, so many of our young men and women, if they haven't experienced, especially they've been incarcerated, they come out and they don't see a path, they don't see an opportunity to a good paying job, then the revolving door just keeps revolving. You've got to provide these paths. Hillary is about not just jobs, but also equity, equal pay for women, a minimum wage that will enable you not to be under the poverty level. What does this say about us if we tell people you should work hard in life, but we have a minimum wage, or if you work full-time and you have a dependent, you're below the poverty level? It tells people that we don't mean what we say. If we meant what we said, that work was important, we'd treat work with dignity and we'd have dignified salaries. And that's why minimum wage is so important. We have to end redlining in housing that I used to fight against, access to credit for businesses, especially women and minority-owned businesses who continue to find it difficult to get access to credit. In this area, I mean, one of the good things about the Clinton-Kaine ticket is, we don't feel like we've got to come up with the ideas. So many of these ideas are good ideas that are out there that people have been advocating, but they haven't been listened to or they haven't been implemented. We're huge fans of Congressman Clyburn, South Carolina. He has a 10-20-30 plan that I know many of you know, and it's very in tune with the values of the PNBC. Let's at least commit that 10% of the funding goes to places where 20% of people have lived in poverty for 30 or more years. I mean, is that too much to ask? Is that too much to ask? Target the resources to where the need is. I mean, that is what we need to do from those who have been given much. Much will be expected, and we should then target those resources to the area where there's need. Persistent poverty in communities that have been left out and left behind, and those are in our urban areas, but also are in our rural areas. Right. And Hillary always talks about urban areas, rural areas, coal country, Indian country. They're all over this country. There's no state in the 50 that doesn't have pockets where the statistics and the outcomes are dramatically different than state averages, and that's where we need to target resources. We've got a plan to reduce educational inequities, starting with high-quality preschool. I went to a Baptist church one time, and I heard a minister preach the sermon on the phrase, "It is easier to build a child than repair an adult." And I've always loved that. I've always loved that. Why not invest more early? Why not start? When I was governor, I expanded pre-K for our low-income kids by 40%, even during a recession, because even though other things had to be cut, we were doing too little in early childhood education and had to do more. Hillary and I have a plan to make pre-K universal and nationwide. We need to stop the slide toward resegregation of schools. We see this, the promise of Brown v. Board and then all the fighting afterwards to finally get over the hump and have integration. We've seen so much resegregation because of neighborhood resegregation. And this hits home for me very personally. Some of you know this story. The niece of that great progressive Baptist minister, Vernon Johns, iconoclastic preacher from Prince Edward, who went to theological college in Lynchburg and then held the pulpit at Dexter Avenue before Martin Luther King was there. He was a powerful preacher, but an iconoclastic guy, and no surprise, he ended up with an iconoclastic niece, Barbara Johns. She was 16 years old, Farmville, Virginia, 1951. She was attending Moton High School, which was dramatically inferior and dramatically more overcrowded than the school a couple miles away where the white kids in Farmville went. And so one day, she wrote a fake note to her principal telling him that he needed to go to the administration office, and when he left, she called the students into the auditorium and said, "We're leading a walkout." And they walked out of that school, Moton High School, and then they called a lawyer, somebody who I was proud to call a friend before he died at age 100, Oliver Hill, an NAACP lawyer in Richmond, said, "You got to take our case." And he said, "I've taken too many cases. I'm too busy. I can't take your case." And then Barbara said to him, she and other leaders in the community, "Well, isn't this about kids? And we kids, we just did something that was about leadership. And you're telling us you're not going to take our case?" And Oliver Hill said, "Okay, I'm taking your case." And so the case got filed. It became part of Brown v. Board, and it led to that seminal decision. But even after that decision, Prince Edward County not only wouldn't integrate the schools, Prince Edward County closed schools down, depriving African American and white kids who couldn't afford private education of any education for a number of years. But in the fullness of time, what Barbara John said when she led that walkout was this. She was asked about it. She said, I want fairness. I want to be treated equally. Did she think it would be easy? No. She said, quote, "It seemed like reaching for the moon. It seemed like reaching for the moon." But she did it anyway. That leap of faith that Kierkegaard talked about, it doesn't seem possible, but you're supposed to do it anyway. And she did it. And in the fullness of time, it was Barbara Johns that won, not the whole apparatus that had segregated the schools. In 1970, my father-in-law, Linwood Holton, Republican, the first Republican governor of Virginia from the party of Lincoln, came into a state with segregated schools, still 20 years after Barbara Johns' walkout. And it had been segregated, sadly, by Democrats, by Dixiecrats. And he came into office and he said on Inauguration Day, "We're going to change things." And the next fall, he integrated the public schools of Virginia. And the New York Times front page picture shows him escorting my wife's sister into what had then been segregated African American schools in the heart of Richmond. The New York Times had a lot of photos of Southern governors standing in schoolhouse doors, blocking kids from coming in. They only had one photo of a Southern governor walking his own children into integrated schools with a smile on his face, saying that integration is good and that education is important, and you should be able to sit next to each other regardless of the color of your skin. A few years ago, we raised a statue of Barbara Johns in Richmond. Mindful of the scriptural invocation, "A little child shall lead them," we raised a statue on our Capitol grounds because it's kids who visit our Capitol grounds. And we wanted kids to see that you don't have to wait to be an adult to be a leader. You can be a leader when you're a child. When you're a child. And every child in this country deserves to learn in a great school, no matter what zip code they're in. We've got a plan to make sure that that's going to happen. And not just K-12, but college. We can't crush kids and crush families with the cost of college. We've got to make significant investment to make college debt-free, and that investment has to include a recognition that it's our HBCUs that are producing our engineers and our scientists and our physicians. And so $25 billion of this investment is for HBCUs and other minority-serving institutions which have produced, which do produce, and which will continue to produce some of the greatest leaders in all the fields in this country. And in Virginia, with so many I have an HBCU 1 mile from my house, Virginia Union and others close by, Virginia State, Norfolk State, Hampton, so many close in Virginia. I've seen that work up close. We've got to empower businesses, I mentioned that earlier, with tax credits, especially on training, to invest in apprenticeships, because as powerful as colleges are, we probably do a disservice to our young kids if we tell everybody that college is the only way. I went recently to speak at a graduation of the Newport News Apprenticeship School that trains shipbuilders. 3-year program. This program's been going since 1919. 3-year program. These youngsters graduate, and they have a job for the rest of their life manufacturing the most complex items on the planet Earth, nuclear subs and aircraft carriers, a patriotic job that they can feel good about every time they walk in the door. And yet, the admissions rate into that program is lower than the admissions rate into Harvard. Harvard takes 5.9% of their applicants. The Newport News Shipbuilding program takes 5.2% of their applicants. 5.2%. And yet, somebody who finishes that 3-year program, we do not even count them as having a higher ed degree in this country. Because we tell families and we tell kids, you got to go to college. And so we've downgraded career and technical training, even though that's such an important thing. And so we have to broaden the respect that we have for the workers that worked in my dad's shop, the iron workers and the welders and the allied health professionals and the computer coders. We got to grapple with criminal justice reform from front to back, from front to back. Now, I'm heartened by this. Criminal justice reform used to be an issue that Democrats cared about, and frankly, we were fighting with the other side. Now, at least on the word side, on the rhetoric side, there is a bipartisan recognition that an era of mass incarceration has served no good purpose and frankly led to a lot of bad. A lot of bad in people's lives, a lot of bad in the budgetary effects. So at least on the word side now, there's a recognition we need to do something, but action has been slow. And so we need to take action to do sentencing reform, to dismantle the school-to-prison pipeline, especially to cut these mandatory minimum sentences for nonviolent offenses that will lead the U.S. to incarcerate more than anybody else in the world, and to make sure that there are support services for people when they come home to their communities. You know, most states still call their prison system the Department of Corrections, but there's not a lot of resources put into corrections. You know, if we were to be honest about our system, sadly, most states should call it the Department of, like, the Human Warehouse or something. We ought to be about corrections. We ought to be about second chances. That's a faith principle we can believe in. That's a faith principle we can believe. I mean, do, Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom, right? Do not presume one thief was damned. Do not assume one thief was damned. Do not presume one thief was saved. Even to the last moment, there's a chance to be second chance. That's who our God is, and that's who our policy should be. Second chance. And that's what we need to work on. And we need to work to close the gulf between our law enforcement communities and our neighborhoods in an awful lot of our cities. In an awful lot of our cities. Just spend a word on this. When I got elected to city council in Richmond, we had the second highest homicide rate in the United States. And we had a horrible aggravated assault gun crime rate. It was horrible. 1994. That was the only top 10 list in the country we were on. We were losing population, we were losing jobs, and the only top 10 list we were on was our homicide rate. We had to make a lot of changes. We hired a really good police chief eventually, who's been succeeded by others, who basically decided that community policing was the strategy. So build the bridges of trust, communication, affection between law enforcement communities and our neighborhoods. And doing that, we cut our homicide rate by 60%. We cut our violent crime rate dramatically. We built up ties of affection in community because our leaders made that a priority. Well, there became a second philosophy about law enforcement early in the 2000s. It was the zero tolerance philosophy. And that basically said, crack down on the small stuff before it gets to be the big stuff. Now, you can understand that as a philosophy in some ways, but rather than the community policing model, which was all about the bond, the zero tolerance was all about aggressive and adversary. And then, sadly, after 9/11, at the federal level, we gave police departments an awful lot of military-style material that, if it went into the hands of police departments that are doing the adversarial style thing, it increased the tension. And then in a recession, a lot of police department budgets got cut. And I bet everybody here who's part of an organization knows that when budgets get cut, the first thing that gets cut is training. You avoid laying off people if you can. You avoid cutting salaries if you can. But what you do is you go to things like training and you cut that. So all the training about community policing and building those bonds, which is really important, that got cut. And so what we see around this country is we see some cities that are still doing it the right way, where the gulf isn't wide, but we see an awful lot of cities that have done it the wrong way, where the gulf is wide. The good news, we don't have to recreate the wheel. Let's learn from the communities that are doing it right. Let's reinvest in training about sensitivity and de-escalating violent situations. Let's, for gosh sake, start even gathering the data and counting the number of people who are killed in police incidents. We count very carefully the number of police officers that are killed in the line of duty, and we should. And when we count it and we measure it, it's because we think it's important, and once we do, the number of police who have been killed in the line of duty has steadily dropped since the 1970s. Even one incident is too many, but we count it, we measure it, we focus on it, we reduce it, but in terms of people killed in police custody or by police, we don't even measure it. It's like it doesn't even matter. We've got to investigate it and count it, and then invest in the resources and training to enable that gulf to close, because we know that gulf is dangerous for citizens, but it's also dangerous for police.
That's right.
I was in Dallas yesterday. Those poor police officers in Dallas, in a department that has tried to do the right thing with strong leadership, they were protecting the right of protesters to protest against the police peacefully. And they were there as a shield for those protesters when they were killed. We've got to figure out ways to narrow the gulf, and we can do this. I've freelanced a little bit because of I still feel so, you're the mayor of a city that has a high homicide rate. You go to too many funerals, you go to too many crime scenes, you go to too many police funerals, you go to too many homicide victims support group meetings in church basements where you're sitting around wanting to find a word to say and not being able to find a word to say. And then I was governor, and we had the worst mass shooting in the history of this country. Sadly, it's now not the worst. If there was one thing I would have wished, is I would have wished that shooting at Virginia Tech never would have been eclipsed. 33 people dead, never would have been eclipsed by another tragedy, and yet it is. Part of what we got to do is we got to speak truth to power and just say, you can support the Second Amendment, that's fine, but we ought to be able to have reasonable rules to keep people safe in this country. We've got to do it. We've got to do it. And so when you see a majority of Americans, a majority of gun owners, a majority of NRA members supporting basic, sensible rules like background record checks so that dangerous people who are prohibited from weapons can't get them, when you see a majority do that, but you see a Congress that still wants to follow the NRA, I know these guys because they're headquartered in Virginia. And when I run, they run against me every time. And I'm 8-0 in races. They've never beat me. Now, I could lose the next one, but if they were that strong, I would have lost one before now. But what happens is the NRA goes to Congress and they say, you got to stick with us. The NRA doesn't even speak for members anymore. They're just a shill for gun manufacturers. And gun manufacturers have one goal: sell as many, whenever, wherever, to whomever. That's their only goal, but that's not the right goal for a nation that wants to live together in peace and harmony. So we will work to close these loopholes and advance common sense rules that are fully consistent with the Constitution. Last thing I want to talk about is voting rights. Voting rights. I went to Honduras when I was 22. And I had been registered to vote since I was 18. And I voted most of the time. I didn't vote all the time. I voted most of the time. But then I go to Honduras to work with missionaries, and it's a military dictatorship. And nobody there can vote for anything. The military controlling it with a gun, and it worked well for a few and not for everybody. And I spent time with people who prayed for the day. One day I might be able to vote and pick the leaders of my town or my community. And when I came back, I had a different attitude about voting, because I realized what we have that we so often take for granted and what virtually huge majorities of people in the world don't have. It's that right to choose our own leaders. And especially, I'm going to make a nonpartisan comment that's going to have a little partisan thing at the end of it. Both the Democratic and Republican parties have kind of been good on voting rights until recently.
That's right.
Until recently.
That's right.
Especially until President Obama became president. Right? And again, I want to pay my props. I want to pay my props on this to the party of Lincoln that my father-in-law at 93 is still a part of. 15th Amendment to strike down any racial restriction in voting passed by a Republican Congress. 19th Amendment to extend the franchise to women, passed under a Democratic President, Woodrow Wilson, but with strong Republican support. Voting Rights Act, 1965, passed in the Senate. Higher percentage of Republican senators voted for it than Democratic senators voted for it. Voting Rights Act has been reauthorized many times with strong bipartisan support. 26th Amendment, giving the vote to 18-year-olds, passed under President Nixon, a Republican with strong Republican support. Up until recently, the Grand Old Party, the party of Lincoln, along with the Democrats, were a party that understood the importance of expanding the franchise and wanted more people to participate. Racial minorities, younger people, 18 to 21-year-olds, women marching ahead, expanding the franchise. We were going in the same direction. But starting a few years before, but especially since the election of President Obama, one party has decided to do a U-turn on its history and be against voting and against participation and put hurdles and barriers up in everybody's way. And you at the PNBC, along with others, have had to participate in lawsuits in states like North Carolina and Texas and Pennsylvania and Ohio and Michigan, states all over this country, to get barriers out of the way. I meet people every day who say to me things like, I'm not sure my vote is that important. I'm not sure my vote matters that much. And what I say to them is, well, you might not think your vote matters too much, but if it was so worthless, why is the other side working so hard to stop you from being able to vote? They think it's valuable. They think it's important. You ought to at least think your vote is as important as the people who are trying to stop you to vote think. I went to Selma with Congressman John Lewis for the civil rights pilgrimage that Congress does every year in 2014. That was the 50th anniversary of the Freedom Summer. We were in Mississippi, then came over to Selma, Alabama. And we just think about those marchers, some of whom I've mentioned, the great Baptist ministers in Virginia who were part of this crusade, marching to win the right to vote, to knock down poll taxes, literacy tests. We cannot let anybody take that away. I call on my Republican colleagues to return to your party's historical roots and recognize that the health of a democracy is measured by the extent of people's participation in the democracy. If you want to know one thing, to know whether a democracy is successful, it should be the extent of the participation. That's the thermometer that tells us whether we're a democracy or not. I worry sometimes when I see voting turnout stats that we have universal franchise, or so we say, and then we put barriers in place, and so then on an election day it might be 60, 65% in a presidential year, but in a midterm 40%, sometimes 35%. We're going to have to come up with a new word, because democracy won't be a word that will describe a situation where there's supposed to be a universal franchise, but only a fraction of the people participate. We'll have to invent a new word. Let's not do that. Let's reclaim our democratic traditions by expanding early in-person voting and making that the rule, not the exception, and repairing the Voting Rights Act. We've got to do that. We have to do that. Absolutely. There's a great proposal by my friend Congressman Bobby Scott in Virginia and the CBC and others to fix the Voting Rights Act in a very straightforward and simple way. You know, what the Supreme Court struck down was the notion that southern states and a few others had to get pre-clearance before they made voting rights changes. So my friend Congressman Scott said, okay, you don't like that geographical thing. How about this? Any jurisdiction, north, south, east, west, any jurisdiction.
All right, guys, we're going to cut out of this Tim Kaine event in New Orleans. He's just about to wrap up in a minute or two. Anyways, we're going to take you live in full to the Donald Trump event in Kissimmee, Florida.
too. Hey, are you guys ready to hear from Mr. Trump? Well, I want to tell you a story. My nephew is standing right back there. Wave, Jake. Jake turned 18 yesterday. And I said to Jake, you know, Jake, 18 really now isn't such a big birthday. It's really 21 for all the kids, for obvious reasons. And he said, you know, Aunt Pam, he goes, I don't drink. He's an athlete. He goes, I don't drink. I don't want to drink. He goes, this is my biggest birthday because I get a vote for Donald Trump for President of the United States. That's because Donald Trump is now and Hillary is yesterday. Our whole country, we are looking for leadership who is unafraid to tell it like it is and do something about renewing our strength and greatness. After we've had 7 years of our national debt at $19.2 trillion, more than any other American president combined. We've seen our friends in the world question our resolve. Our enemies challenge what we're going to do. And Obamacare devastate our businesses. And the EPA threaten our jobs. So I'm telling you that Washington, D.C. train wreck is coming in for a reckoning. We are about to come face to face with a leader who doesn't trade in politics but excels at winning. And we know Donald Trump does not tolerate things that don't work, but instead will restore things that do. We know something drastic has to be done in our country. We've got to get America back on track, and Donald Trump is going to do that. He will look out for our men and women in uniform overseas and in this country, all of our first responders. He will have their backs because they have ours. And if anyone asks you, being a career prosecutor, this is the most important thing I can tell you. If anyone asks you why they should vote for Donald Trump for President of the United States, I have 2 words for them: Supreme Court. Because we know Donald Trump will put conservative jurists on the bench who respect the rule of law. And we know exactly what Hillary Clinton will do to our courts. 7 more years of the same. And this will affect us for at least 30 years or more to come. I know Donald Trump, and he will fight for us every minute of every day. Independence is coming very early next year in January, when Donald J. Trump becomes President of the United States of America. God bless you, God bless America, God bless the Trump family. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the next President of the United States, Mr. Donald J. Trump.
Wow, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. We have been all over Florida, and we're winning Florida. We got to win. You got to get out. So November 8th, you have to get up and you have to go out. You have to vote. We're going to win Florida so big. We're going to win the whole thing. We are going to make America great again. We're going to make America great again. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate it. And we're going to have a good time together. So we've been all over Florida, and a lot of things are happening. I love you, too. I was a guy, but it's okay. Who cares? Okay, so many things are going on. I watch the news. So much corruption. So much is being learned. Aren't emails a wonderful thing? Right? Right? What a great invention. And things came out just over the last 2 hours. When you go home, I'm not going to do it. Because if I mention it, they'll play it down. So I'm not going to mention. But things came out over the last 2 hours that are very, very serious. When you go home, you're going to watch the news. You're going to say, I learned that from Trump. But you wait till you see. Wait till you see. Wait till you see. And then you had $400 million in cash being shipped to Iran. How about that one? But no, that had nothing to do. Now, what's going on is crazy. It's crazy. I don't think we've ever seen anything like we're watching now and we're witnessing now. We've never seen 33,000 emails discarded, deleted, out, over, done. 33,000 emails. No good, folks. No good. It's no good. It's no good. And we're not going to let it happen any longer. Now, Hillary Clinton, commonly referred to as Crooked Hillary, Hillary Clinton, gave a speech today having to do with economic development, having to do with a lot of different things. Short speech, always very short, you know. She makes the speech. She turns off the teleprompter. Look, what happens? She gives a short speech, then she goes home, goes to sleep. She shows up 2 days later. Remember, short circuit. Remember that, right? Short circuit. But there was a story 2 days ago in the Washington Post, big story. And it was a story about Hillary Clinton, which is shocking because the Washington Post doesn't do these kind of stories. And it was the most devastating story you've ever seen. When she was running for the Senate in New York State, she said things that should have happened, could have happened. She was going to save upstate New York. And instead of saving it, it turned out to be a total and complete disaster. It's like a disaster. She was going to put in hundreds of thousands of jobs, and the reverse happened. People left. People went to Mexico. Companies went to Mexico. People are unemployed. You have to see it now. You know, in the primaries, I got to know it very well. I got to know the people up there very well. Many of them have left. but they said she made promises to us, Mr. Trump. She didn't keep any of them. And now she's talking about her plan. And her plan, what does it do? It raises taxes. It raises taxes. Maybe the greatest, biggest tax increase in the history of our country, folks. We're not going to let it happen. So here's the story. She wants to raise taxes. We're going to cut taxes down to a level that we haven't seen in many, many years. Many, many years. And we're going to put people back to work. We're going to bring our jobs back to Florida. We're going to bring our jobs back to our country. Our jobs are leaving. Our companies are being ripped out of our country, and they're being brought to Mexico and other places. Our jobs are being taken away like we're babies. It's like taking candy from a baby. We're going to stop it. You know, I won, and I appreciate all those people that are still pouring in. I said, we're going to have to start early tonight because nice night, we'll be together, we're going to have a lot of fun, even though we're talking about a little bit of a bad subject. Somebody said that my speech at the convention was very dark, you know, the haters. Now, they said dark, and I said, no. It was very optimistic because I tell what the problem is, and then we talk about how we're going to fix the problem. We're going to fix the problem. And we do have problems, thank you. And we do have problems. We have problems with trade. We have problems with borders. We have problems with everything you can think of. Our educational system is a disaster. By the way, we're going to end Common Core. We're going to bring our education local. 100%. Not even a question. We're going to lower your taxes. We're going to keep our companies, but we're going to keep our companies in a different way. And I say all the time, for years I've watched our companies leave. This is why I'm doing this. I didn't have to do this. I was having a very nice life. But folks, we have a movement. Look, we have a movement going on, the likes of which I guess they've never seen in this country. You know, we have 10,000 people. When we speak, 10,000 people, I always say, oh, that's great. We have an easy night tonight. We have crowds, 25,000. We have something happening, the likes of which they've never seen. I'm the messenger. I'm a messenger. I'm a messenger for common sense. I'm really a messenger for common sense. You know, so our companies are leaving one after another. Taxes are too high. Regulations, by the way, are a disaster. Regulations. The regulations we have in our country are a disaster. But the taxes are too high. What we're going to do is we're going to change things. We're not letting our companies leave without consequence. There will be consequence when our companies leave. There will be consequence. You know, I went out to Indiana, which was supposed to be a state that I wasn't going to do well in. We won in a massive landslide, by the way. The evangelicals were so good. How many evangelicals? Where are the evangelicals? Where are the evangelicals? So what happens is the evangelicals took me to a point that I never thought we could even reach. All over the country, we did well. And I just met, by the way, oh, look at her, wow. So, that's so nice. Thank you. But in Indiana, one of the reasons we won, well, one was Bobby Knight. We had Bobby Knight. We love Bobby Knight. But And we have, by the way, how good is Mike Pence? Okay? How good? What a job he's doing. And he's all over the place. He calls me and he's getting great crowds and people are loving him. We love Mike. He did an incredible job as the governor of Indiana. AAA bond rating, great employment. I mean, everything he's touched, he's been terrific. And he has been terrific with me, I want to tell you. We're so happy. So remember, Governor Mike Pence, Vice President Mike Pence, he's doing a job. But our companies are being taken from us. And we're not going to take it anymore. We're not going to let it. For years I've been watching, and for years I've been amazed that our politicians would not do anything about it. We're losing some of our best companies. Taxes are too high, but there are a lot of other things that are wrong. But taxes are too high. And here's what's going to happen. When a company leaves Florida, because they're going to go to, let's say, Mexico, which is, by the way, Boomtown, USA. Mexico is one of the great wonders of the world, what's happening. Well, we're going to build the wall, believe me, folks, okay? We're going to build the wall. We're going to build the wall. We're going to build the wall. Okay. We're going to build the wall. Thank you. We're going to build that wall, and it's going to be a big wall, and every time somebody tries to fight us, that wall gets 10 feet higher. It's going higher and higher. And by the way, are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Who is going to pay for the wall? 100%. 100%. 100%. Hey, by the way, is there any place to be that's better than a Friday night in Florida at a Trump rally, right? Is there any place? Nobody. No place. There's no place. There's no place. No. So a lot of the politicians, they come up to me and they go, especially initially, you're only kidding, Donald. You're not really going to build a wall. I said, of course we are. They said, you can't build a wall. I said, of course we can. In China, 13,000 miles. That's the length. 13,000. It's called the Great Wall of China. Maybe nobody's ever heard of it, right? The Great Wall of China. This is a serious wall. This was built without hydraulic equipment. This was built without Caterpillar. This was built the old-fashioned way. 13,000 miles, built 2,000 years ago, and this wall is pretty good. We're going to top it, though, folks. You know, we can do things. We're going to top it. But the politicians would come up to me, and they'd say, you know, Donald, you can't build the wall. I said, you have to be kidding. You have to be kidding. Concrete plank, you have to be kidding. Precast, right? Precast, boom, being done, keep going. No, they actually thought, it's like, I just looked, as an example, we went all over. I mean, we're going all over the place. We're going to work, I think this is my fourth speech today. I'm doing television all over the place. Governor Mike Huckabee has been so amazing, and Pam, I want to thank Pam for being here, and everybody. Where is Pam? Where is Pam? She's so amazing. Governor Mike was going to come out and introduce me. He's doing a live show on Fox. I said, do your show on Fox and come out later. But Mike Huckabee has been incredible. He's been incredible. But the politicians, not Mike, but the politicians would come up and they'd say, so let me ask you, you're only kidding about the wall. And I'd say, no, I'm not kidding. Now they become believers. Then they'd say, but you know you can't get Mexico to pay. Can you believe it? We make so little. Listen. We have a trade deficit with Mexico like more than $60 billion a year. That's not including the drugs that come in, right? That's a big number. And we're going to stop the drugs from coming in. And we want people, we're going to stop it cold, by the way. And we want people to come into our country, but they have to come in through a process. They have to come in legally, right? Right? Have to. Have to. They're going to come in legally. And I'll tell you something. When they come in, we're going to want people that want to be here. Hi, folks. This place is incredible. We've got 2,000 people outside trying to get in. This place is incredible. So, no, honestly, there is a spirit that we all have that nobody has. That nobody has. When I say make America great again, we want something to happen. We're tired of we don't win anymore. We're tired of it. We want to win. We want to win with our military. You know, our military is totally depleted. It's depleted. 2 fighters went down 3 days ago. These fighters are exhausted. These jet fighters. They get parts from airplane graveyards. That's where they get the parts. They're so old, they don't make the parts anymore. Our military's depleted. Our vets aren't taken properly care of. And we're going to take care of our vets. We're going to take care of our vets. We're going to take care of them. We're going to take care of them. We're going to take care of our vets. We take care of people that come into our country illegally better than we take care of our vets, okay? So we're going to change it. We're going to change a lot of things around. But they say you will never be able to get Mexico to pay for the wall. Now, recently, the former president of Mexico, Vicente Fox, he went on a major broadcaster, I think it was CNN to be exact, live television, and he threw out the F-bomb. He said, there is no way we will ever pay for that, and then it was the F-bomb wall. I said, oh, is he in trouble? This guy just said the F-bomb on a major network on television live. He's in trouble. Nobody ever mentioned. Can you imagine if I used the F-bomb? You know what it would be? I tell people, it would be the electric chair if I used the F-bomb. And I said, oh, is he in trouble? But I'll tell you what I liked about his statement. He used to say, there's no way we will allow the wall to be built. Now he assumes it's going to be built. So now he's saying there's no way that they're going to pay for the wall. Let me tell you, they're going to pay for the wall. And they'll be happy about it. They'll be happy about it. They'll be happy about it. You know, if Mexico wanted to, and I have great respect for Mexico, I have great respect for its leaders. Its new leader is an amazing person. We're going to get along great with Mexico. Its new leader is a great person, an amazing person. The problem is their leadership is much smarter, much more cunning, much better than what we have in our country. We have incapable, incompetent people. They don't know what the hell they're doing. They don't know what they're doing. So with Mexico, we have such a tremendous trade deficit. And when these politicians say there's no way that they're going to pay for the wall, I say, fellas, we have all the cards. We have the cards with China. We have with China a $505 billion a year trade deficit. Unbelievable. It's been that way for years. It's been that way for years. It was $200 billion and $300 billion and $400 billion and $500 billion. And what do we have? We have chains closing stores. Macy's announced they're closing over 100 stores. We have real jobs, bad jobs are all over the place. We have a problem. We have a statistic, 5% doesn't exist. What exists is 20%, 21%. Our unemployment rate is through the roof. The 5% stuff is made up so that politicians and presidents look good. If you look for a job and you give up looking for that job because after 4 or 5 months you can't find one, you are considered statistically employed. We have, oh, forget it. Forget it. Now look at this. I just got these numbers. Look at this. And this is economic failure. The Obama-Clinton economic policies produced a 1.2% growth, right? That's like no growth. You know, if China goes to 7%, they consider it a national tragedy. We're at 1.2% and going lower, and we're going lower. We're going in the wrong direction because our companies are leaving. Our taxes are too high. We don't have the right people representing us. And when they leave, and when they go to Mexico or wherever they go, and they fire all of their employees in Florida and all over this country, and they make their product, and their product is made in Mexico or wherever, and they think they're going to sell that product back in the United States and even back in the areas where they fired all their employees, just tell them they're 100% wrong. There are repercussions, right? There are consequences. When you leave the United States, when you fire all your employees, when you go to another country and you make the product, there are consequences. Now we're going to have a strong border. And when they want to sell their product across that border and they think they can do it, not going to happen anymore. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. They will pay a 35% tax on that product. Now, I watched Hillary today, which was really boring, but that's something. It's hard to watch. It's hard to watch, I have to be honest. I have an obligation to watch. Fortunately, she never goes very long because she wants to go home. But I watched Hillary today. I watched her. And she talked about trade. Now, just so you understand, her husband signed the worst trade deal in the history of maybe the world, NAFTA, signed by Bill Clinton. Maybe the worst trade deal in the history of the world, certainly of our country. And she's going to approve Trans-Pacific Partnership. You know, she called it gold standard or something. Let me make a speech. She heard me right. Goodbye. Goodbye, Dara. Goodbye. 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 Where the hell did he come from? Man.
All right, folks, we're working to reestablish that connection that we just lost. Hold on one second. We're going to get it back in 30 seconds here.
Voting for us. And the reason is simple. It's because of trade. Because one thing Bernie got right is he knows that we're being ripped off by every single company and that wants to come in, but by every single country in the world. We are being ripped off by everybody, but especially countries are just killing us. Every single country is just ripping us, and he couldn't take it anymore. The difference is he can't do anything about it. I can. We're going to make great trade deals. We're going to make great trade deals. I mean, we have rebuilt China. We have rebuilt China. You look at Japan. You look at what's going on with Japan. They send in millions of cars. We send them wheat. We send them beef. You want to talk about a trade imbalance? Take a look at the numbers on Japan. And speaking of that, I did something a little bit different. I actually went out and had some cards made. Okay? You have to see them. Look at this. I'm so proud of these cards. Look. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? So here, this is what's happening to our country. We can't allow people to come in from very, very hostile and unfriendly territories. We can't do it. We have enough problems. So from Syria, with the migration, we don't know where these people come from. There's no way of vetting them. The documentation is like, there is none. They say there is. It's a sham. She just said it's a sham. It is. Good word. Thank you. So here is President Obama has commuted the sentences of more men and women than the past 9 presidents put together. And some of these people are bad dudes. So you look at it, look, here's Bush, here's Clinton, here's Bush, here's Reagan. Oh, we could use Ronald Reagan again. Even Jimmy Carter, look, Jimmy Carter. Here's Ford, Nixon. Look, and these are people that are out. They're walking the streets. Sleep tight, folks. Sleep tight, okay? Sleep tight. So that's one. How's that? Pretty good chart, right? Well, this is just where they get a lot of their money from. 25 million from Saudi Arabia, 5 million from Morocco, 5 million from Oman, Bahrain, Algeria, Qatar, lots of money pouring into the country. Look at this one. Look at this one. This is a beauty. This is a beauty. Number and percent of immigrants in the United States. Look at the chart. Okay? Look at the chart. Not good, folks. Not good. We want to make America great again, folks. We want to make America great again. Yeah. So here's one. And you notice they used a terrible picture of Hillary. And I said, no way you're going to do that. That's not fair. Use a good picture. So they used a beautiful picture of Hillary, which I think is right? So I'll tell you, that's the good news. The bad news is, look, the amount of money, campaign contributions from hedge funders. Now, I know these guys. These are guys and women that are tough and rough and don't give a damn about you. They care about, that's why you see so many things happening. These people, so look, she's received in campaign contributions $48,500,000. I've received $19,000. I don't even know who the hell it is. Who is it? Who is it? Nice picture, right? Was I nice? Good picture. So I received $19,000. I want to find out who it is. I'll give them their money back. What the hell do I need next? Are we liking these cards? Isn't this great? It's different. It's different. Look at this one. So what's the American dream? The American dream, right? This guy knows best. Stand up, David Siegel. Stand up. One of the great builders of all time. Guy's loaded. He's got so much money. But more importantly, he's got a great family, right? He's a great guy and a great friend of mine for a long time. Too long. We don't want to talk about how long, right, David? So, what's the great thing that everybody wants? Home ownership, right? That's the American dream. The American dream. We want the American dream. We want to own our home, right? So here's our owning of the homes, right? Look at this chart. This is a disaster. So, U.S. home ownership. It's down more. I think they said like 51 years it's the lowest, right? 51 years. So look at this. Obama. Great job, Obama. Boom. I don't think so. That's not too good, right? Not too good. Look at that number. It's crashing. That number is sad. That is not good. And then she gives a speech today on the economy. And by the way, she said today, during her speech, that she's going to try and negotiate trade deals. You know, the only reason she said it is she's been listening to my speeches for the last 2 weeks. Can't do it. And assuming she wanted to do it, her donors, the guys that put up the $48 million, her donors and the people that she has, they're not going to let her do it because they're making a fortune off these deals. They're making a fortune on trade. Now, I don't know if you see it in Florida, but I do. It's so depressing. You go home, you turn on the television. All you do is see phony ads on Donald Trump. Phony ads. They're phony. Most of them are phony. You know, it's a couple. Not 100%, but I'd say 80%. Don't believe them. They're phony ads. You know, when I was in the primary, they did the same thing. I had so many ads, you couldn't see. It's like a friend of mine called up. He lives in Florida. He lives in this area. He loves this area, but he's going crazy. He says, I can't turn on the television without seeing a negative ad about you. And I know it's not true. I said, don't worry about it. You got other problems. Don't worry about it. He goes, no, I swear, Donald, I want to see just one Ivory Snow commercial. Anything. They've got to get off you. They've got so many phony, they're just false ads. And then my people say, you really should...
All right, everybody, we're going to break into coverage here. We're going to take you to Dallas, where there is a police pursuit going on right now with this pickup truck. You could see that there are Our police cruisers behind the pickup truck. This is in northwest Dallas. That is the latest info that we have right now. You're watching the Fox 10 News Now stream, part of fox10phoenix.com. All right, everybody, and thank you for watching on our Fox 10 Phoenix Facebook page. Watching this live right now, we are watching a police pursuit in northwest Dallas. We're just on the highway, and they got off. Now it looks like in a residential area right now. You can see the police cruiser behind this pickup truck. We're watching this all unfold live. We just got the stream about 2 minutes ago. Not sure on how long this pursuit has been going, but it was on the highway for just a little bit, and now it's got off to residential area. And this is where it's always a scary situation, as it's becoming rush hour here as well in Dallas. And see, it's going through passing cars right now, so let's hope this ends safely. He's going through a lot of traffic right now, the suspect is. We're not sure why suspect is running right now, but we will continue to monitor this for you. You're watching this all unfold live right now on the Fox 10 News Now stream, as well as, ooh, looks like he hit the car just a tad there. He's going through intersections now, always the scariest part of a pursuit. Cruisers are behind this pickup truck. A lot of the times with these pursuits, the suspect, hits the median now. Almost hit that car there. He had to swerve into oncoming traffic there, go over the median, and he's now back on the right side of the road there. But scary situation that we just saw there. He's been going through these red lights as he's in a heavily residential area right now. Going through, this could be bad here now. Another red light. Going over a median again. And thankfully, once again, dodging cars from oncoming traffic. Police cruiser, once again, still behind this pickup truck. I was saying earlier, a lot of times with these police pursuits, the suspect knows eventually they're going to get caught. They're going to get pulled over, or they're going to get a horrible accident, but they want to try to extend their last moments of freedom before they eventually have to go to jail. And everyone, let us know where you are watching from right now, and let me know how you think this police pursuit will end. I'll be looking at some of your comments here, and you could always communicate with me on the Facebook post itself. And we just lost the stream here. Let's see if they're going to be able to reconnect it here for us. Yep, there we go. Come on. Still residential area once again. Happy to see that our stream come back there. Heavily residential area in Northwest Dallas right now. Always the scariest part of a pursuit, for obvious reasons here. It's about 6:45 their local time there in Texas. We appreciate everybody watching right now on our stream. If you haven't already done so, now would be the perfect time to hit that like button on Facebook to always be in the know of when we are streaming breaking news from anywhere around the country. A lot of you are posting in the comment section when I asked you, give me a prediction of how you think this chase will end, saying it probably will end in a crash. The way this has been going, he's been taking a lot of chances right now, swerving in and out of lanes here as it's getting, once again, a near miss again. The one cruiser has stayed very close to the suspect. And we do want to caution you that this is a live stream, so viewer discretion is advised at all times. Once again, this pickup truck is coming into heavy traffic in Northwest Dallas. You can see some of the cars getting out of the way. We see another police cruiser coming to aid the other officer. Cars are pulling to the side here, but these intersections always the most scariest part of these pursuits, especially in these residential areas. We've seen sometimes these police chases last an hour and a half, 2 hours when they're on the expressway. But when it gets to this area, there's just so many variables that could happen now. Yeah, a lot of you are mentioning also in the comment section that you're just hoping that this ends peacefully. Yeah, absolutely. That's what we want to see here. Just hopefully the suspect will, one, run out of gas or just want to stop on his own. But at this point, the suspect has been taking so many chances. We've seen probably within the last 4 minutes about 4 near misses. And one he actually, another one where this is where it gets dicey. Oh, wow. Another red light he's gone through. Always a dicey situation when they go through those intersections. I cringe always when we have to see that because it only takes one time. One time. Looks like the truck is now picking up some speed here. It's been relatively a slow pursuit as this is a heavily residential area and he's been going through many red lights. So suspect did have to slow down just to make sure that no cars were coming. But we saw a couple times go into another intersection here. Okay. Just going to try to pick up some speed on a straightaway. Let's see how this is all going to unfold here. It appears like the truck now is picking up some more speed on these straightaways here. No word yet if any police agencies are going to be trying to do some stop sticks coming up. We'll have to see how that unfolds. That's always a tactic used by some police agencies as well. Heavily residential area. That's the scary part. I mean, you could have a little kid on a bicycle coming in and out of the street. Looks like another red light here. Oh, almost. Let's see. Can he get boxed in? No. Oh, that could have been the time. That could have been the time. Oh, wow. These intersections, folks, I don't know if you could hear our newsroom. Our newsroom is also streaking as they are watching this live as well on our TVs here. But, boy, dicey situation here in residential Dallas. We've seen so many risks be taken here. Let's hopefully this ends safely. Another straightaway, another opportunity for the suspect to pick up some speed. Once again, these suspects always trying to extend their last moments of freedom. I mean, they got to figure they have a chopper above them. They have a cruiser that's right behind them. And they're always very, very selfish because they're putting so many people in harm's way. They're taking extreme risks. Here's another, going to oncoming traffic now. Oh, boy. Oh, wow. Another intersection. Now back onto the right side of the road. Another straightaway, another opportunity for the suspect to pick up some more speed. You guys are all watching the Fox 10 News Now stream, part of fox10phoenix.com, and we do also appreciate everyone watching on Facebook Live right now on our Fox 10 Phoenix page. And haven't already done so, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button so you always know when we are streaming breaking news from anywhere across the country. It can come right in your timeline. That way you'll be in the know and you'll be able to share this with your family and friends, let them know what's going on in the country. And following this pursuit now for the last 15 minutes here, hoping that this ends peacefully. Still heavily residential area. A lot of the times these suspects try to stay in the area that they are comfortable in or know the area because they want to know the side streets to go on and they want to know that there's not a dead end coming up. They don't want to make a wrong move like that, especially when they are on the run. Interesting to me right now that suspect's not trying to get back on a major highway here because this is going to be... Okay, we're going a little bit slower here. Let's see what's going to happen. Is this... Are we giving up right here? This could be a... Let's see what happens. Looks like he's stopping. Suspect is stopping. Going very slow right now. It looks like we might be coming to an end here. Officers are out of their cars now, guns drawn. It's hard to see with the tree right there, but let's see if Chopper could get us a better angle. There we go. Okay, suspect coming out. Putting his hands up. And going to the ground. There we go. We have a surrender. Well, that's what we wanted to see right there, a peaceful ending. Not sure if the suspect ran out of gas or just said, you know what, I've taken too many dicey situations here, too many chances, and wanted to just give up before getting in more trouble or causing a death to an innocent person or himself. All right, folks, if you're just joining us, welcome to the stream here. We did see a police chase that lasted for about 15 minutes that we covered it for. Chase did end peacefully. All right, everybody, we are waiting for a press conference here in Arizona, in Buckeye, Arizona. Federal and local authorities in Arizona are still searching a field for a 10-year-old boy who has been missing for nearly a month. Buckeye Police Sergeant Jason Weeks say officers are walking through an undeveloped lot covered with brush and trees as part of what he called a secondary search. He says authorities have been actively searching for Jesse Wilson since he went missing from his home and want to double-check areas that had been searched for previously. We'll try to get that for you here. I know it's a little dark shot right here. Buckeye Police, the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, and the FBI participated in Thursday morning search.
We're just starting a short test. Okay, very good.
Cops and lawyers, and you ended up doing this. What were you guys, doctors? You ended up doing this?
Now, you're all modern with all of your iPads and whatnot. All right, well, tell the folks your name and all that.
My name is Larry Hall, H-A-L-L. Where do you want me to look?
It's kind of, anyway.
All right, I'm the police chief of this city of Buckeye.
Chief, extensive search today. What did it garner?
Yeah, we worked a joint search with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, did a large area search, and we were unable to come up with locating Jesse Wilson or any type of evidence at this point.
Why these two areas?
The area that we were searching was in close proximity to where he lived, and if he was able to make it out further that night that he went missing or was lost in that area, it would have led us to that general area. It was just the most common sense area to search at this point.
I think we saw a significant change in the tone of this investigation today. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we have to consider many different theories as law enforcement and as investigators, and one of those theories is this could be a possible recovery of Jesse Wilson, which led us to that area, and it was more of that type of search.
Can you tell us a little bit about what detectives did at the family home today?
They did have contact with Miss Wilson. I don't know or I can't elaborate any further on that contact.
She's still cooperating?
She's still cooperating with our investigation. Yes, she is.
Did they bring out any evidence?
That I don't know. That I can't comment on.
Where do you go from here?
This is going to be, this is a long investigation, and we're already 3.5 weeks into it. We continue to search. We're going to continue to put efforts forward. This is a 10-year-old boy that's gone missing. I mean, for all of us that are parents, this is something we hold sacred, and we are going to continue to do everything we possibly can to bring closure to the family and the community.
I know that the tips it's not been like a plethora of tips. There's been 20, 30. It doesn't seem like a lot when you've got a 10-year-old missing.
You know what? In speaking with the FBI today, it turns out there was probably a misstatement on my part earlier today. They received hundreds that we've been working. The radio calls that we've gotten from other agencies regarding this, people calling in, turns out we received a few hundred of them, not so much the 20 or 30 that I initially quoted us on.
And how would you prioritize this case inside your police department right now?
It's the case to work right now. It is the highest priority. Anytime you have a missing child, we're going to do everything we possibly can. We've had incredible amount of community support, starting with the search the first few days. Incredible community that we live in here. And we're going to continue to search. We're going to continue to work this investigation, and we're not going to stop. We don't have an option on this.
Thank you so much.
Sorry to comment on some of that stuff.
That's okay.
That's what it is.
You got right there with you got harassed internally for
Scenarios.
24
24 times in 2 minutes.
Oh, they count.
Oh, you count it. They're going to have a beer game called Scenario.
All right, there you go, folks. Just a little update for you. No finding yet of the little boy in Buckeye, Arizona during today's search for Jesse Wilson. Take a look at a live tower cam right here, right now. 97 degrees, wind is very calm right now. Clear skies at 5:11 here in Arizona. We are going to reset the stream and be back a little bit later this evening.